So excited right now to share this encouraging message that God gave me. I've been working on this. As you know, I talk a lot about abuse and domestic violence. And you know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. From my research, and I had to do this on my own, from my research, before it became Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it was the Day of Unity. That was back in 1981, October of 1981. So in October of 1989, it was officially declared as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I'm so glad to be here today to talk about domestic violence because I am a survivor of violence, domestic violence, and abuse. And I have my book, Not by Myself, where I talk about a lot of the issues that I faced and the traumas that I faced during those traumatic times of my life. But by October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it is time to become aware that men also suffer from domestic violence. Yes. My last show I talked about the virtuous woman. And what I need every woman to know that you are a virtuous woman. Every woman is a virtuous woman. And just in case some people may have forgotten, every child, man, boy, girl, every woman came from a woman. A woman gave birth to children. There's not a man, I hope not. If it is, I don't want to know who he is, that gave birth to a child. So, women, if we want to do something about domestic violence, if we want to, get the numbers down as much as we can, it is time for us to speak life into our children. It starts from the beginning. It starts from childbirth. So if you don't speak life into your child may grow up to become rebellious. They may become violent. These things stem from emotional neglect. It comes from abuse, anything that the woman may have experienced. If you experienced anything while you were pregnant or even before you became a mother, it is time to get on your knees, pray, and ask God to cleanse you and give you a new spirit. Because if we want to see changes in the domestic violence numbers, if we want those numbers to go down, women, it starts with us. It starts with us because we are nurturers. I have a chapter in my book. Again, I suffered these traumatic events, and I have a chapter in my book, chapter 8, Forgiving to Forgive. That's something that a lot of people say, oh, I can't forgive. Yes, you can. If God forgave you, you can forgive. But God also says, but if you do not forgive, neither will your Father, which is in heaven, will forgive your trespasses. So if you don't forgive, God won't forgive you. And if you forgive, that doesn't mean that you are making the situation or the person okay for doing what they're doing. You're forgiving because you are now asking God to use you for his will. Forgiveness only opens your heart for God to use you for what he needs to use you for. If you forgive and say, I won't forget, then you are really blocking your blessings. I forgave and I didn't forget. And I thank God that I didn't forget because God needed to use my situations for me to uplift him in glory. And that's why I share my story. I write the book, and I've touched some lives just with my story alone. So if I didn't forgive, I wouldn't be sitting here now letting you know just how good God is. So again, virtuous woman, It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have men who suffer, and it is time for us to listen to our men, listen to them, because they're already being stereotyped. We see so much violence and everything going on out here. And the first thing we always say, oh, that doesn't make sense. What in his eyes, it makes sense. Even though we see it as it not making sense, he's lashing out. Most men try to find help or seek help, and they are afraid because they're going to be not believed, or men go through a lot. If we don't see it in our nation today, what our men are experiencing, virtuous woman, it is time for us to step up and do what God called us to do, and that is to uplift every man, boy, girl up to God. We need to do that, because if we want to see change, change starts with us. We are to open our minds, we are to open our hearts and do what God has called each one of us to do. Everyone has a purpose. Nobody is that's walking around now doesn't have a purpose. You have a lot of people trying to figure out, oh, what am I supposed to do? Oh, what am I here for? What is my purpose? I had someone ask me that. Well, I don't know what my purpose is. And all I did was made a suggestion to say, sit quietly, close your mind, and open your heart. And then God will let you know what your purpose is. But the thing is, you have to be patient. You have to be patient, because when you quiet your mind, guess what? The devil is going to come in, and he's going to try to sit right next there, not right next to you, and try to figure out what you're trying to do. But you have to be careful, and you have to be mindful of your thoughts. If it's something that you're thinking and not feeling, you have to put yourself in a place where you know the spirit of discernment, because we all know that the enemy has so many ways to deceive us into believing that what we are doing is from God. But you have to know who God is. You have to be completely connected to God, so that you can know that whatever you are doing is coming from God. And another thing I want to address is, again, the men that suffer from abuse. I always research these numbers. The murder suicide is, the numbers are just, it's sad. 97%. From the last time I researched, it went up again. It's now at 97% murder suicide. And yes, the victims are females. But we have to know that it is an underlying issue that needs to be addressed, because the first thing people will do, ladies, if you have a son and your son come to you and tell you that his wife or his significant other is abusing him, I'm not sure what your reaction may be, but some women will be, well, you should have left her, or if she hit you, you should have hit her back. No, men, if you raise your son to not harm a woman, and he himself is being abused, and he gets to that point where he hit her, now he's going to be in trouble. He's going to be in trouble. And for the virtuous woman who has a son, my child would never do that. I raised my son not to hit a woman, but your son never came to you to tell you that his wife or his significant other was abusing him. And ladies, if you are a mother and if you have a son, just think about your own child. Whether he's a child or an adult, he's still your son, and you wouldn't want anyone to abuse your child. Now, from my experience and some people that I know, it's some women that's so overprotective of their sons that they don't like no females being around their son. So I can just imagine how difficult it can be for any woman to learn that her son is being abused. And for the abuser, the woman, think about your own child. If you have a son, think about your own child. And not just the son, your daughters also. Because if your daughter is being abused and she becomes a mother, it becomes, it just becomes a ripple effect. You have the daughters that's being abused. They become abusers because of their experience. And not only if if they're abused, it doesn't have to be physical, it could be emotional. And sometimes even if they're exposed to it, they don't have to actually experience it, but just being exposed to abuse, they can still become abusers. So nurturers, virtuous women, it is time for us to stand up and protect our children, whether it's a girl or a boy, a man or a woman. You have a child, and the only thing you want to do is just make sure your child is protected. From the day you give birth, that's the first thing you think about. I'm going to protect my child the best way I can. Well, whether your child is an adult now, you still should have that mindset that I want to make sure my child is protected. And sometimes, again, we don't have all the answers, but if we sit down and we continue to learn one another at our age, whatever age you are, we can still get an understanding of what may be going on in your child's life as an adult. Again, I shared most of my story in my book, Not by Myself. That's the title of the book. And again, in chapter 8, it talks about forgiving. Like I said, that's the main thing we need to learn how to do is to forgive. Again, forgiving does not make it okay for the person to do what they are doing. Forgiving is opening yourself up for God to do what He needs to do in you, through you, and for you. Because we are all here for a purpose. We are all here for a reason. And God needs us to do what He called us to do. This book is a small read, and I can read a little bit out of it as far as what I had to go through in regards to forgiving it. It was the most difficult thing for me. I shared a scripture in it. It says, "If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you." And that comes from the book of John, chapter 15, verse number 7. So if you want to become a survivor of abuse, if you want to be healed from whatever traumatic situation you may be facing, or whatever it is you may be going through. Some people are suffering more from depression now because of the pandemic and all of these changes that's going on in our nation today. So if you want to be healed from whatever it is, ask God. Ask God. He will do it for you. That's His promise. But you have to trust Him, and you have to believe. Because if you don't trust Him and if you don't believe Him, it won't happen. It won't happen. And the other thing, patience. You have to have patience, because a lot of people, they want to pray and they expect an answer right then and there. God answers in His own timing. It was something recently that I just received an answer to a prayer I prayed almost 2 years ago, and I forgot I prayed for this one thing, and I just received the answer to this prayer, I want to say last Friday. And it was just an amazing thing because I forgot I prayed for that thing, and I only prayed for it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I forgot about it. So once you pray and ask God to do something for you, Trust Him. Trust Him and just work towards that very thing that you pray for. If it's healing, find ways to get support for healing because it's there. It's there. Men, if you have a difficult time, which I know because I talk to a lot of men and they say they just don't trust nobody sharing their story with. But men, there are ways that you can get help. If you just start a support system yourself for other men, just reach out to other men and just start a support system like that. And then because women, we have so much resources, there's a lot of information out there for us. But men, if you don't feel comfortable calling these other hotlines or whatever, start one for yourself. Start one, and then just reach out to other men because it is a way that you can get help. We don't want to keep losing you. We don't want to see these murder suicide numbers continuing to rise. We are losing our young men. We are losing our children to violence, and it's because our children are feeling neglected. If the parents feel neglected in some type of way, it's going to be an effect on their children also. So it's just time for parents to come together. Even if you're not married, you have children or whatever, it's time to come together with your children and just really talk to them and find out what's going on. And a lot of times I have to be honest because I suffered from it too. I didn't feel comfortable going to my parents. I felt comfortable talking to someone who wasn't real close to me. So if your child feel uncomfortable, let you know what's going on in their life. Don't take offense to it. Even though you say that's your child, they're supposed to come to me and talk to me about what's going on. Sometimes your child may not feel comfortable. It's not because they don't love you, it's because they don't feel comfortable. They're not comfortable. I had that problem. So again, if your child is able to go to someone and talk to them to help them, you know, let them do that because it's helping them, and then they'll become a little bit more comfortable sharing whatever it is that's going on with you because it happens. Again, I used to work for RTA. I drove for almost 20 years, and it just touched my heart to have some of the young, I call them young hearts, just open up and shared a lot of personal information with me. And I just made suggestions. It was a few suggestions. They even told me they didn't feel comfortable talking to their parents because every time they try to talk to their parents told them they didn't have time to talk to them. So again, if your child can find a way to get help or just open up and talk to somebody, parents, don't get offended by that because your child is reaching out and seeking help. Now, it's another thing to ask somebody for support that you don't know, but then if your child go out there and become destructive, and then you as a parent say, well, I tried to do everything I could, my child never talked to me about anything, or I had to work to make sure I provided for my child, the child may be feeling neglected. It only take a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes out of your day. Start off in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes with your child. Have a conversation. And then when you get home in the evening, have another 5 to 10 minute conversation. And that's all it takes. That's how you build your relationship with your children. And that's the beginning of a positive lifestyle, open communication for them because it starts from home. Everybody say everything starts from home. Yes, it does. It can. So if you could take 5 to 10 minutes out of your day to just hold a conversation with your child to see what's going on with them instead of just pushing them off, I'll talk to you later, or letting making them feel like whatever it is they're going through is not important. Whatever your child is going through, it is important, because if you find your child becoming destructive or even going out there using drugs or whatever, just getting in trouble, then you're going to try to figure out what happened, what went wrong. And it was just that 5 minute conversation that you could have had with your child. So all of that does make a difference. Again, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and those are some of the things that you as a virtuous woman could start doing to make a difference in your child's life, for it not to become a bad thing with your son or even your daughter become a victim. We don't want our children to become victims of violence, because it's something we can do about it. It is. The numbers are going up and we don't know why, but now is the time, because this is this pandemic, all of these things that's going on in our nation now. We have to spend more time at home, and that's a greater opportunity to connect with your family on a different level. So, just this being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, don't let it stop with just October. It shouldn't stop with just October. Let it be a continuing thing. This is a lifelong process to get to the root cause of domestic violence. If we want to see a change in this pandemic, this domestic violence situation, it starts with us. That's where change begins. Change comes from within. If I didn't ask God to heal me, and if I didn't find it in my heart to forgive those who hurt me, I wouldn't be sitting here now sharing my story and sharing what God did for me in order for me to be able to share these things with you. So again, if we want to see change in our personal environment, it begins with you as an individual. So virtuous woman, whatever you want to see changed in your personal environment, it starts with you. It starts with your mindset, and it starts with opening your heart to God and letting God do what he needs to do in you, through you, and for you. It is time to lift yourself up to God, and then lift your children up, because right now we have to set an example for our children, because it is about their future now. We have to let them know that they do have something to look forward to. So domestic violence, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, as well as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But we have to be mindful of the other things that's going on in our personal environment. We can't give up on anything. We have to become a part of a lot of things that's going on in our community, because if we want to see change, we have to be the change that we want to see. It starts with us. So, virtuous woman, I am praying that you would just be encouraged to use the voice that God gave you. Thank you. Thank you.